What if I told you that there was a shortcut to everything that you wanted? The freedom, the fulfillment, the abundance, the connection, the peace, the joy, and everything that you want to create and experience. Would you want that shortcut? Would you take that shortcut? Well, in truth, there is. Because underlying anything and everything that you desire is actually a cornerstone. It's a linchpin. It is the one master key that unlocks all the doors to any desire that you have in life. And that is, simply put, love. And when I say that word love, you're probably thinking in terms of affection or romance or intimacy or some kind of a typical human experience of love. And it includes that, of course, but that's not what I'm referring to. When I say love in this context, I mean the self-love, the self-acceptance. I'm talking about a reverence for life itself. And in that sense, it's an embrace of all that is, as it is, right here, right now. You as you are. And that's why I say acceptance. And that's why I said love. Because the love that I'm referring to is actually the love of being. And you see, this is where it starts to become more specific. Because in truth, everything that you desire is already yours. It's already within you. The only way that there seems to be closed doors and locked gates and sort of off-limits territory is because you yourself, each of us, puts up an artificial, illusory boundary around it. And then we create a story thinking that we need to do something in order to get it or earn it, or we need to overcome something in order to achieve it. When really, it's right there for the taking. But we have created a story, created an illusion, and therefore created the seeming obstacle within ourself to realizing it, to feeling it, and therefore to creating it within our experience. And you see, this is where love comes in, because let's look at this from the lens of kind of the duality, right? On one hand, you have who you believe you are, who you think you are, who you experience yourself to be in the most familiar sense. It is that sense of self, that self-concept. We can even call it the ego, right? And the ego is predicated upon a sense of survival, needing safety, needing predictability. It exists in linearity, continuity. And in that sense, it doesn't really like change. It doesn't like the unknown. It just wants to stay here, secure, safe, familiar, comfortable. And that creates this self-preserving mechanism, which kind of buffers itself from everything that seems to be threatening. Any seeming consequences, anything that's seemingly attempting to alter it or change it. And so that's contending, in a way, with who you really are, your true self. And this is consciousness. It has consciousness. And that's just it, because everything that you experience, everything that you've ever known, everything that you perceive, all the thoughts, all the feelings, all the appearances, all the forms, all the beings, everything within the universe, within creation, is consciousness. And so that real you, that is consciousness, that has consciousness, is not afraid. It is not concerned. It is not worried. It is curious. It is in reverence of all of itself, in all of life, because it knows life and all of life's forms as itself. Because all of the forms of life are merely the outpressing of consciousness. You see, this is a bit symbolic, but it's the analogy of your inner world, right? Because there's a part of you, consciousness, which is curious. which is revering of all of life. And in that sense, it is unconditionally loving. It wants to know all parts of itself. That part of you, the real you, wants to know all parts of you. It embraces all parts of you. It accepts and forgives and loves all parts of you. Nothing is off limits. Nothing is fearful or guilty or shameful or anything like that. It's all just neutral. It's all just equal. In truth, it's all just bliss, because it's seen to be the truth of itself as a reflection, seemingly out here in form. But then there's the other part of you, the egoic part of you, that sense of separation which exists in survival. And as that self-preserving mechanism, it seemingly experiences consequences and threats to exploring certain parts of yourself, even things that seem to be apart from you. And so then it creates compartments and boundaries and limitations and habits and conditions and all these sorts of funny things to reinforce its sense of solidity and safety and continuity. Because again, it doesn't want to change. Anything that seems to threaten its existence is blockaded and excluded. But that's to its own detriment as well. And that's the thing about the ego, is that it will do and believe and create the illusion even to its own detriment. And so the ego never really wins, even though it gets its reality. It gets to be right about its experience of self. But it creates the illusion of cutting you off from the greater reality, which is all around you, which is all within you. And so how this often shows up is suppressed and repressed emotions and thoughts and memories and experiences, all of which, from the point of view of pure consciousness, is an utter marvel. It's an endless curiosity. It is a beautiful tapestry of itself, consciousness. It is like a painting where the ego will say, well, I don't like those colors, and I don't like that way of creating it. I don't like that texture. I don't like that tone. Whereas consciousness is just in reverence of all of it as it is, for what it is. And so this is an interesting analogy, because we create our own experience of separation, and therefore our own feeling of not belonging, of not being worthy, of not being ready, not being good enough, of not feeling safe, of not being secure, of not fitting in, everything else, of not having enough, right? Everything that this ego constructs as a story to reinforce its sense of separation, which is only the boundaries of its own fear. And that's where consciousness comes in, because consciousness is utterly fearless. Not necessarily in a heroic way like we've seen in our movies, but in a pure, innocent sense, in a way of humility, in a way of earnestness, in a way of curiosity. And this is what I was meaning in the beginning when I said love, because the love of being, the love of creating, the love of playing, the love of becoming, the love of discovery, the love of uncovering, the love of embracing, the love of acceptance, the love of everything, the light and the dark, the good and the bad, the high and the low, right? The positive and the negative. It is all seen through the lens of consciousness to be beautiful. And you see, so that's when something magical happens. When even the ego and its wounds and its hurts and its bad memories and its bad habits and all of these things that are otherwise judged and criticized are seen in the light of consciousness to be perfect, are just seen to be as they are. And when you can recognize these kind of two parts of yourself, which of course there's not two parts, but for the sake of the analogy, It's kind of like the child and the parent, right? We have the inner child, which is endlessly creative, endlessly curious, endlessly loving, and naturally being. And to that inner child, there is nothing off limits. There's no sense of cutting anything off or suppressing or repressing. It has not developed that capacity, right? I'm referring to that child of, less than 5 years old, let's say, where, you just allow everything to be as it is. You've not come into this sense of needing to protect yourself from anything, or needing to avoid anything, or needing to escape anything, or needing to cope with anything. It's just what it is. All the emotions are as they are. All your thoughts are as they are. Everything that's happening out here is just what's happening. You have not developed a relationship to it. You've not developed a story around it, right? And so that inner child is kind of consciousness. And that inner child then becomes this kind of, through experience, a wounded, hurt, separate sense. And then it just needs protection. It just wants protection. And so then you develop this relationship with that part of you in protection. And usually it's kind of put into the closet, or it's kind of put into the corner. And it's just meant to be kind of separate from everything. And in that sense, it's cut off from the life that's coursing through your being, the vitality and the well-being and the creativity and the inspiration and the courage and the conviction and the confidence and everything that is natural to who you really are, which once embraced and allowed, life becomes magic, becomes easy, it becomes effortless, it becomes a streamline of the stream of your consciousness, which is endlessly creative, infinitely abundant. And so the parent is sort of this consciousness, right? And when the parent can meet that child in its security, in its compassion, in its willingness, and even in its stability as an identity, then the child can feel safe and secure, right? It can be met with compassion. And this is the dynamic between the true self that has consciousness, that curiosity, that love of life, of being, and that part of you that's just trying to survive. And when you yourself can entertain both and hold both and bring both together in the light of your consciousness, then you are free. And can you see that when you liberate yourself in the light of consciousness, when you allow everything to come together and fit into an integrated whole being, the true integrated whole being that you are, then everything is available to you. And in a way, everything is instantly accessible to you. Nothing is off limits to you. For the imagination that is the container that contains all possibilities is seen to be your true self, that infinite field of consciousness, the potentiality of creation that is within you. And when you are not compartmentalized, when you are not cutting off parts of you, when you are not avoiding and evading and escaping and coping, trying to manage and control your experience, but when you open the doors and the windows and allow everything to move, and when you meet yourself in reverence, with a curiosity, and in love, then the light that you are can shine.